I have already done a video on my top books that I have read and I recommend for people who are in their 20s. This one is about podcasts, and I know not a lot of people are into reading, and I absolutely understand that. But podcasts are something that you can obviously just listen to whenever you're on the go, and they are very entertaining, filled with insights, and so good if you want to gain a lot of knowledge in a very short span of time. So, let's get into my top 10 podcasts that I highly recommend for people who are in their 20s, because these have been the same exact podcast that I have listened to or I have been listening to since the past 3 to 4 years of my life, and I'm 25 right now. So let's get into this and let's talk about my top 10. The first one has to be no other than Jay Shetty's On Purpose. Now, On Purpose is I think it's the number one health podcast in the world right now, and it totally deserves that title. On Purpose has this mix of so many different kinds of guests. Jay Shetty does not just talk about health in general or like just monk stuff. He also talks a lot about neuroscience. He talks about physical issues. He talks about motivation and students and lifestyle and all of these things. And even somewhere or the other he talks about Ayurveda, because he does bring on guests like that on his show to cover each and every aspect of our life and each and everything that is important for us to know about life in general. And one of my most favorite episodes of Jay Shetty's podcast has been the one where he had bought Lisa Bilyeu on the podcast. You'll obviously see images on the screen. That one, and then he also had brought Tom Bilyeu. They both are like husband and wife. So he had also come on Purpose, and then he had also brought the one who the one who talks about the brain, the quick brain something. Hold on, Jim Quick. Yeah, yes, it was Jim Quick. These particular episodes have so much of insights in them that honestly I have downloaded them on my Spotify, because I have Spotify Premium, and I just listen to them whenever I feel like, and they just never fail to entertain me. They never fail to refresh my memory on these exact topics that these people talk about. So On Purpose tops my list because that is also one of my most listened to podcast, and I just love Jay Shetty for his work. So thank you, Jay, for bringing On Purpose in the world. Absolutely love it. Highly recommended for people who are a bit lost, also want to use their time for better. On Purpose. The second one I have is of the people that I just mentioned. Lisa Bilyeu has Woman of Impact, and Tom Bilyeu has Impact Theory. So both of these both of them are husband and wife, and they talk, and they also have another podcast called Relationship Theory, which I don't listen to, but I'm just mentioning here. But Woman of Impact has been the most favorite woman-led podcast that I listen to, and it has been one of my most listened to podcasts in a very long time, because this particular podcast covers basically everything that you need to know about life, about relationships, about sex, about motivation, about how your brain works, about all of these things. And it is so amazing to be like a part. Like whenever I listen to that particular podcast, I feel that I'm a part of that particular podcast, like I'm sitting right in the room. And Lisa is such a graceful host. I absolutely love her and adore her. So that is for, obviously it's like Women for Impact. It's not just for women, anybody can hear it obviously, but it is such a good podcast that will basically, it's the whole package. It is the whole package. It's better for women because they also talk about fertility issues and birth control issues and all of these things. So if you want to learn more about that, or you want to just know about other people, go ahead, listen to Women of Impact. Beautiful podcast, amazing host. Coming to Impact Theory, which is by Tom Bilyeu, it's the same. You might have seen its motivational videos on YouTube here. And he has guests like Mel Robbins and Matthew, the relationship guy, and all of these different people. And it's really good. For me, sometimes it gets a bit more intense because I don't understand where the conversation is going. But actually, after On Purpose, I started to listen to Impact Theory. And then I went on to listening to Women of Impact more because that resonated with me a bit more. Maybe because I'm a woman, or maybe because of the energy of the podcast. I don't know. But it was absolutely amazing. And both of the husband and the wife, they both are amazing. And you should listen to their podcast because it is so good. The fourth one I have is, this is more spiritual, this is more Ayurvedic based, this is more spiritual, this is more yoga and meditation and all of that. Not exactly meditation, but yeah, it's in that category. It is the Highest Self podcast by Sahara Rose. I have her oracle deck, which is the Yogic Path oracle deck, and I've talked about it a lot. I have watched her a lot, be it on my Instagram or YouTube, or like listen to her podcast, whatever it may be. I have seen her a lot. I have engaged with her the most on social media, and she has this aura about her where she just feels very inviting and she feels very safe. I've obviously not personally talked to her ever. I really hope one day I would, but I've not personally talked to her or personally engaged with her. But everything that I have heard in her podcast, or I've used her deck as well, it is so beautiful. It is literally soul nourishing. That is the only word I have for her podcast and her work. It is soul nourishing. That if you really want to listen to a podcast where you dive deep into, you as a human or any other entity, or you want to talk about different realities and dimensions and yoga and Ayurveda and all of those things, Sahara Rose is the person for you. Highest Self podcast is the podcast for you. These four are actually like my top four. Like, I always listen to these, and there are some others that I also added in the mix. And some of these are YouTubers, some of these are not, some of these are just podcasters. So the fifth one I have for you guys is, so this is a pure meditation based podcast. I do not know if Mindful in Minutes has a YouTube channel or not. I will put all the links down in the description box. It is by Kelly Smith, and I'm not sure if she has a channel over here or not, but she does have a podcast, and she only does meditations on the podcast, and her voice is so soothing. I have downloaded a few of her podcasts because sometimes I feel really it's hard for me to sleep, and I listen to her voice and sleep. I know it sounds creepy, but yeah, she like whatever her meditations are, it is so good. Because honestly, I have never found a pretty good, meditation podcast or a YouTube channel. All I find is just sounds, and these are like proper guided meditations. So if you are looking for something more, like, instead of just doing a normal meditation, you're looking for intuition building, or you're looking for sleep, or you're looking for, becoming more aware, or you're looking for chakra meditations, this podcast is for you. The next one I have is by Eileen. A lot of you guys might know her. She has a very huge YouTube channel over here by the name called Lavender, and she also has a podcast. And I honestly like her podcast. I mean, I do like her YouTube channel, but I like her podcast more because for me, her YouTube channel videos are more just surface level, I feel like, and her podcast episodes are more in depth. So if you're somebody who's into self-love and self-care and all of that in a more aesthetic manner, Eileen is the person for you. Her podcast is really good. The different kinds of guests that she brings up there, it's really interesting to listen to their stories, and it just feels amazing. Like, it feels like a one-on-one connection for me. Like, I've been watching Eileen for quite a few years now, but when I discovered her podcast, I was like, oh, that's amazing. Now I can just listen to her all day long. But yeah, her content is really consumer friendly, I would say, or it's not very deep, yet it is not very surface level. It's like pretty good, pretty good. Next one I have for you is a podcast that I've not heard about much. It is by Paul Fishman, and this is The Road to Self-Love. Paul Fishman is a sweetheart, honestly. Like the way he hosts the show, he actually drives around while he has guests in his car, and they record it, and they just, record the podcast, and then he just publishes it. So he basically has, a proper on the road kind of a podcast. So he records it while he's driving with the guest in the car. Like right now, I am not listening to a lot of podcasts, but the last podcast episode of Road to Self Love that I listened to was the one where he had Kim Kranz, whatever. She is the creator of the Wild Unknown tarot deck, and she came up on his podcast, and it just felt surreal to me because there was this different kind of, like this different kind of aura or this air or this vibe to the podcast episode while I was listening to it. I literally felt like I was sitting right in the back seat, of that particular car. And I felt like I was in the same moment as them. It's really amazing. He talks a lot about emotions and feelings and how it affects people physically, and he talks a lot about his journey because he had like so much emotional baggage. He actually had started to gain weight, and once he started to let go of that emotional baggage, he also started to lose weight. So he talks a lot about all of that, and I absolutely love him because I share a similar story with him. Like I share a similar story like him, and I just love that somebody's out there talking about it. Paul Fishman, The Road to Self-Love. This one is, I can say, I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to insult it. Okay. I'm not sure if this is an indie podcast, like a very small scale podcast or what. This one is by Lisa Gilmore, and this is called Unwinding. And this is a podcast if you are somebody who likes to listen to conversations between people, like, two best friends sitting in a room having a conversation. If you are that kind of a person who likes to listen to that kind of a conversation, this podcast is for you, because honestly, Lisa's podcast literally feels like I am the third person in their bestie conversation. It is like, okay, if I wanna like listen to two people talk, this is the podcast I go to. They have fun in it, they have jokes in it, they have very deep talks in it. Obviously, every podcast has like a topic overall, but whenever she brings on people, like whenever guests come on her podcast, it's like, it feels like the guests are coming at her podcast with their guard down, on like contrary to, On Purpose and, Impact Theory. These are like more, mental based podcasts, or, people are like coming with their best self and, like portraying who they really are. But here on Lisa's podcast, Unwinding, it feels like everybody is just at the same wavelength, and people are coming without their guard on, and they are just comfortable. I've heard a lot about Call Her Daddy, but I've not listened to it personally. I honestly don't want to. But yeah, Unwinding is a podcast for people who want to be a part of besties conversations. Okay, this one is purely for manifestation, and this is something that you might have heard of. I'm not sure. This is Manifestation Babe by Catherine Zenkina. I used to listen to this podcast. I don't right now because I'm not listening to podcasts anyway. But Manifestation Babe has been one of the biggest manifestation based podcasts in the world, I guess. And it is pretty good because the content is good. The way Catherine talks about it is good. I'm not sure about how many guests podcast episodes I've listened to, but whatever they were, like how many ever I've listened to, they have been pretty good. I always learn something or the other whenever I listen to the Manifestation Babe podcast, and I think it is amazing because, she talks about things that not a lot of people talk about when it comes to manifestation and spirituality. So if you are into spirituality and manifestation babe is for you, for sure. You're gonna learn so much out of it, and you are gonna be really, really thankful that you listen to me and you start listening to that podcast. The last one I have is more business minded. I have a lot of business minded podcast suggestions as well. I have a true crime and horror and thrill podcast section as well, which I will come out with later. But this one is a bit business based. This one is a bit money based, and this one is also a bit more into women-led businesses and all of those things, content creation, Instagram, and all of that as well. So if you are into something like that, this one is probably for you. And this is the Boss Babe podcast by Natalie Ellis and Daniel Canty. This has been one of the oldest podcasts that I've been listening to, honestly. I used to, like, I follow them on Instagram since such a long time. I listen to their podcast since such a long time. I don't even remember when I started, actually. But honestly, this has been one of the major businesses that I have actually followed, and I've seen them, go from small number of followers to a very huge number of followers in a particular span of time. And honestly, I follow their business. That is why I listen to their podcast. It is not the other way around. Like, I started to listen to Sahara Rose, then I started to actually, go online and check about her and follow her on Instagram and everything. But Boss Babe, for me, was like, this was very early on in social media and, Instagram and everything. So they were actually like my only source of learning about Instagram and other social media platforms and how to run a business and all of that. So they talk a lot about this. If you are into something like that, this is surely the one for you. I have so many other suggestions as well, but in this video, I'm just going to limit it to 10. But honestly, if you really want to ask me which one you should go for, I think that one would be On Purpose by Jay Shetty. If you don't want to go for that one, if you already know that one, I think you should go for Impact Theory by Tom Bilyeu or Woman of Impact by Lisa Bilyeu. And honestly, I hope you really have fun with these podcasts, and let me know down in the comments below if you have listened to them before, or give me a top, 3 of yours that you listen to regularly. No category based, it can be anything. I will be coming out with new videos on podcasts and books as well, so stay tuned for that and make sure you subscribe to this channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.